Okay, welcome back everyone to my day 2 recap from the World Rapid Championship in New York City. If you saw my recap yesterday, you'll know that it was a pretty good start. I was coming into today with 1.5 points out of 5 games, but yesterday I played 5 higher rated Grandmasters, and today I played 4 more games against all higher rated players. So I'm going to say this right now. Today was not the best day for me. There were a lot of moments of tragedy and blunder, not just in my games, but for the tournament overall, which maybe I'll address at the end of the video. But I want to start with my games. So this was my first round of the day. I was playing Valentin Dragnev, Grandmaster from Austria, right? Yeah, Austria. And we can see I played the London opening. Now I'm going to try and keep this brief. I'd said that in the previous recap, and it ended up being close to 35 minutes. These games I probably have a lot to talk about, but yeah, starting with this one, London opening. I wasn't sure what to expect from my opponent. This is one line I did not prepare specifically for my opponent, but I actually played the same variation a few days ago in a training tournament against a friend of mine, WGM Tatev Abrahamian. And all these moves I had studied a few days ago. I was actually preparing this line for Tatev. So I was very familiar with this position. And white is slightly better here. With knight d2, I was fighting e4. And going forward, I complete development. And very soon into this game, my opponent went wrong. And we'll get to that moment. Put my queen on a3. This is a nice square, aligning with the black queen, pinning this pawn, tying the rook down to a7. And then, yeah, the next move from black, knight b d5, already see is dubious. This allowed me to play pawn e4. And I'm not only attacking the knight here, I'm threatening to play pawn e5 to fork the knight and the pawn, which is still pinned to the queen after the knight moves. So what ends up happening is we trade on f3, on f4, and I play pawn e5. Black's in trouble. My opponent, I think, just didn't have enough danger levels before allowing me to enter this variation. And should note my queen defends the bishop, but if knight takes d3, I would take here first, and white's winning a piece because I hit the queen and the knight is hanging. So that didn't happen. My opponent played knight 6 to d5. I take on d6, and I win a pawn. Yeah, and not only do I win a pawn, I get a very powerful pawn on d6. And it only gets better from here. Opponent plays queen to d8. Engine says queen f6 was best. Should also note queen d7 runs into knight e5. So that's already very unpleasant for black. I play bishop to e4. I hope people appreciate the eval bar. Sometimes I do these recaps without the eval bar. But yeah, we can see how big white's advantage is. And yeah, it keeps growing, because after takes, my rook infiltrates, my other rook infiltrates. And at this point, I thought I'm just crushing my opponent, which I pretty much am. I'm threatening to take here. And also I'm tying down black's rook to defending f7. And my opponent plays rook a to b8. And we can see the time situation. I'm up about 3 minutes on the clock. And this is where I wasn't entirely sure how to maximize my advantage. Now, the engine gives a lot of strong moves. One of the moves I wanted to play was, what was it? It was queen c5 I was looking at. But I didn't go for this because after queen takes b2, there's a line knight e5 and then knight e4. And yeah, f2 is hit along with my queen, and this would no longer be winning for white. So I play the move here, pawn to b3, to try and set up queen to c5 and ensure that my b2 pawn would not be hanging. Engine doesn't like this, but white's still better. my opponent plays knight to e8. And at this point, I began panicking a little bit, because at first I thought I can just play rook d7, save my rook and save my d-pawn, but then I realized black can repeat. And if I can't play rook d7, I move back anywhere, I lose my d6 pawn. And this is where I burned most of my remaining time trying to figure out how I can still play for a win. And I was already kicking myself with allowing this move, that I don't think I was in the mindset to just keep the foot on the gas. I play rook d7, we repeated once, opponent again goes back to e8. And the move I wanted to play here was knight e5, which is a top move. It still gives white a clear edge, but for some reason I just wasn't thinking clearly. I wasn't sure if I can allow like takes, and then rook c8, and then d4 is hanging, c7 is hanging, but this is all winning for white. There's knight d7, queen takes e7, and knight takes f8, and like somehow this line just didn't crystallize in my mind that my queen defends my rook on e7, my rook attacks the queen on c7. Black could play queen c1 and trade queens, but the resulting ending is just winning for white. Black would have to take the knight, I win the b7 pawn, and this should be very, very winnable. So yeah, unfortunately, I didn't go for it. I burned pretty much all of my remaining time. We can see on the timestamps. I used to have 8 minutes against around 5 minutes, but then I fell to around 1 minute, and I just repeat rook c7. Engine says this is a very bad blunder because it allows threefold repetition, and the game ended. Yeah, my opponent, I forget if it was claimed, or I think maybe I offered the draw because I was concerned about my time. So yeah, unfortunately, I played what was almost a perfect game here. Uh, Maybe I can show the engine graph. We can see that, yeah, I was never worse this game. My advantage just grew. Maybe I played inaccurately for a few moves, but I just didn't capitalize on the winning opportunity. So I think part of this was a confidence issue, and then part of this was just a focus and calculation issue. If I was maybe more in the zone, and maybe if I did more tactics training leading up to the tournament, perhaps I would have won this game. But I figure the draw is still a fair result against the Grandmaster. Life goes on. And yeah, after this game, I was then 2 out of 6 going into round 7. So let's get to round 7. This time I'm playing a fellow IM. This is my first IM opponent of the tournament, but still higher rated. Yiping Lu from China. And I didn't have much time to prepare for this game, so I just kind of played my usual repertoire. Opponent played English. We transpose into a Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation. And I'm actually really curious if my opponent prepared for me, because we played into the same line I had in my 5th round game of this tournament. If you want to see my recap of that game, watch my previous video. But yeah, this is the exact same position I had in round 5. And here my opponent played knight e5. In round 5, my opponent castled, and this led into a slightly different line where I prevent knight e5. But after knight e5, we are actually following the game I played about a week ago against Fabiano Caruana. And if you want to see my coverage of that game, it's maybe a couple videos ago on my YouTube channel. It was a game where Fabiano wanted revenge for me beating him in the previous game. Knight e5 is the best move, so it makes me think that maybe my opponent either saw the video with me playing Fabi, or maybe saw that I play this in online games, or saw my round 5 game and he prepared this. But objectively, it's probably the best move for white, and it does lead to kind of a slight edge for white. So going forward, I still blitz out my prep. Pawn c5, castle, knight c6, takes, rook c1. This is still following my game against Fabiano. And in the game I played against Fabi, I played bishop to e7. But in this game, I decided to play a different move. And I played rook to c8, which I knew is one of the top engine moves. And it's actually the move that Jeffrey Zhang played against Ding Liren. It's the only game I could find in the database. This was back in 2022. And the simple idea is to preemptively defend the c6 pawn so that when the knight moves to attack the bishop, my bishop can freely move and the pawn's defended. And that's what happened in the game. Knight a4, I played bishop e7. Now, I probably should have played bishop d6. Yeah, this is what Jeffrey played against Ding Liren. And this actually transposes into, just go ahead and show Master's Database, there are 8 games in this position. But when I played bishop e7, I was trying to transpose back into my game against Fabiano, because if my opponent plays this, then this is the exact position I had against Fabiano. And I actually got the advantage in the middle game against Fabi after he played queen c2, knight d7, rook a5, c5. Momentum was on black's side. But in this game, we went into a very different line. Opponent plays b3, a slightly slower way of playing. And I play knight d7, offering the bishop trade. Opponent declines the bishop trade, which I think is the correct decision. Now this bishop is piercing through my position, and I can't challenge the diagonal with bishop d6. And then going forward from here, it just felt like I got outplayed. I played queen a5, preventing this bishop from coming in. But then my opponent plays queen e2, preparing bishop a6. And already here I'm feeling a bit uncomfortable, even though the eval bar says it's still very close to equal. Yeah, pawn c5, bishop a6, rook d8, queen b5. And this gave me the option of either playing queen d2 or queen takes b5. And I took some time here, like kind of investigating queen d2, but it looks really risky where it seems like my queen is nearly getting trapped in white's territory. Queen d2 is in fact the top engine move, but I took on b5. After bishop takes b5, I'm still under a lot of pressure. White's threatening to take and then win my pawn on c5. And I'm trying to hold on for dear life. And I play the move pawn d4, trying to simplify things in the center. And there's some idea here that if takes, I take back with, actually the engine says takes with bishop. Yeah, basically if we go into this line, I'd be down a pawn, but there's obstacle bishops, and I think very good drawing chances for black. So we didn't go into that. Opponent took, I took, and bishop to c7. So my rook got kind of kicked around, had to move to e8. And then I'm still worse because my d-pawn is very weak, and I can't easily defend it. If I play bishop to f6, there's bishop d6, and then my rook is kind of stuck. I'd have to go back and I lose the pawn. So at this point, I'm going for more active counterplay. I start with bishop a3, rook c2, and knight f6. Engine doesn't like this, but it led into a position where we end up trading first rooks on e2, and then the other pair of rooks, hoping for some back rake ideas, but opponent has rook to d8. So all the rooks come off the board. We each have 3 minor pieces, but my opponent has 1 extra pawn. And at this point, I was feeling like my opponent probably has better chances to win than I have chances to draw. But of course, I'm still fighting. And I really wanted to target this pawn on a2. This is white's biggest weakness. If I play bishop b1 right away, then there's knight c3 attacking and defending. So I start with knight d5, looking to come into b4 potentially, or just play bishop b1 and ensure knight c3 is not playable. Opponent plays bishop c4. I play knight to b4, and then bishop to e7, I'll admit I didn't see this move coming. I'm now pinned from behind. It's a little bit awkward. I do have knight c2 here, which Engine says I should play, but instead I play a5, also a playable move. And then bishop d8, knight c6. Engine is criticizing a lot of these moves, but yeah, it's the nature of rapid chess, nature of IMs playing, rather than grandmasters as well. But going forward, I'm able to hold on to my a pawn and then eventually target white's a pawn. I provoke pawn a4, and then I shift my attention to targeting these things, the bishop on c4, and eventually I want to play bishop c2 and attack from behind. And my opponent didn't handle things well. Bishop d5 apparently is a big blunder. The best move would have been bishop b5, restricting my knight. And yeah, it's according to Stockfish, it's plus 1.7. Because, yeah, why is that? Bishop c2. Yeah, bishop c2, bishop d4. White can get rid of my knight on e5, and then if f6, there's takes, and oh, wait, scratch that. If f6, there's f4. And then eventually the bishop will come to c4, defending the pawn. And yeah, white's up a pawn. But that didn't happen. My opponent played bishop d5, allowing me to more effectively target the pawn from behind. And my knight is not as restricted with the bishop on d5. After bishop d4, I have knight to d7. And now I'm looking to reroute to c5. And there's really not much white can do here to save the pawn, because I want to play this. And if white takes, I'll eventually have bishop to d4, and the knight is very short on squares. If it ever moves to c4, I can then take on b3. So the game ended pretty abruptly. Opponent played knight c4. I took, and then knight b6. And it was kind of a weird finish, because a lot of things were attacking each other. Knights and bishops having a staring contest. I played knight to c5. So keeping some tension, but then everything trades. Takes, and this is dead drawn. Off the card bishops, and we shook hands. So it was a decent start, at least on paper, to my day today. 2 draws against 2 higher rated players. And this brings us to round 3 of today, but round 8 of the tournament. So coming in, I am 2.5 out of 7. And, oh man, this game brings me pain. I don't want to spoil the result, but this was one of the biggest tragedies for me today. And it's a very long game. It was 98 moves. Not quite breaking the 100 move mark. So I'm playing a grandmaster from Georgia, Merab Gagunashvili. And I was actually happy with this pairing because he's a slightly older player. A lot of the players in this competition are young players, younger than me. I think this player was born in 1985. If I'm wrong about that, I'll put a fact check somewhere. But basically what happened this game, I played the London. I got a big advantage within the first 10 moves. My opponent, I don't think, knew this tricky line, knight c3. He took, plays bishop g4, already allowing knight b5. This forces knight a6, and it's already close to a +1 advantage for white. I develop, queen e6 was an interesting idea. The point is, if I play bishop to e2, there's takes. Engine says I should have gone for this, but I didn't want to deal with the double pawns. So I played bishop e3. Still nice position for white. And then, going forward, black is able to complete development, despite the awkward pieces. And I didn't really get to maximize my advantage as much as I wanted to. We traded on e3. I thought I was playing natural moves. Knight e4 was played. And I decided to take on e4, knowing that after pawn takes, my queen is hit, and the pawn on a2 is hit. And I thought there'd be good compensation. I thought that if in any case black takes a pawn, then I'll have some counterplay on the king side, e4 will be weak. But I think I just misjudged the situation. And essentially I gave away my whole advantage. I did overlook this move queen to c4, attacking my knight, delaying taking on a2. And my opponent wins a pawn. And if I take on e4, which probably I should have done, then black can take on b2. It's hitting this and this. So I didn't take on e4. I played rook e2. And then going forward, yeah, I'm just down a pawn. And it's very unclear where my compensation is. And my position just got worse and worse. Also, my time situation was very bad. I burned a lot of time. In some moments, my opponent was playing very quickly. And I'm just going to zoom through because, yeah, I felt like I was getting completely outplayed. But I didn't give up hope, even though, yeah, it's maybe not the cleanest of play. Still down a pawn. I want to get to key moment where, yeah, black keeps making progress. Seems like I'm getting ground down. But eventually I take on e4, and position simplified like, enough where I feel like I have good chances to draw this. But very soon I end up plundering one of my pawns. Yeah, let's get to this moment. Queen f6. And yeah, I mean, I had less than 30 seconds. I missed the fact that this move is playable, attacking my two undefended pawns. And now I'm going to be down 2 pawns rather than just 1. And by the time we get here, black should be very winning, but I tried to resist. I'm just living on increment, trying not to die on increment. And now I want to get to the next critical moment. We danced around a lot. I'm trying to make sure black can't break through with pawn f3. I do have the blockade. My opponent was very hesitant to push the pawns on the king side because maybe it does weaken the king a little bit. So he danced around with his queen a lot. Didn't really make progress. Eventually we trade a pair of rooks, which I didn't mind. And then my opponent blunders. Plays queen e2. If you're watching and you want to find the nice tactic for white, feel free to pause the video. White to move and win back a pawn. And I was very relieved when I saw queen e2 on the board because I was trying to make such tactics work with my move rook takes f4. And point is, after rook takes f4, I play queen c7. We trade rooks, and now I'm only down 1 pawn in a queen ending. I have queen in 2 versus queen in 3, and this should be very holdable. We see the eval bar, like black is only up by 0.1, so this should be a draw. And I was holding on very fine. I checked the king. I was trying to make sure that black can't trade queens. And basically, I played perfectly for, okay, maybe not perfectly. Queen d6 apparently is a blunder. I thought I was playing perfectly through these moves. I have noticed though, at like even the top level, sometimes these queen endings feature the most amount of mistakes. Like they're very hard to figure out, and they're deceptively complicated. But eventually I got some position which looks like perpetual. Like at this point I thought we were just going to repeat and black king is not hiding anywhere. But somehow the king slipped away. Went to h5, play queen e8, king h6. I keep checking. And then we get to this position. And what I should have done was just keep checking. There's one logical check for white in this position. Queen d2. I should have played it. I think if I played this move, the game would have ended in a draw very soon. The king is really not going anywhere. If king e4, I check, and then the king's going to have to move back. Moves to f5, I take on b5 with check. But I didn't play queen d2. I played one of the worst possible moves in the position. And I'll try and explain my thought process, because when I played my next move, which I'll say is queen takes b5, I was calculating g3, king g1, queen a1, and then queen f1. And I blocked the check with a check. We would trade queens. I have the outside passer, and then actually white is maybe even winning that position. So I did the brief calculation, and I took on b5, completely overlooking the fact that after g3, king g1, black doesn't have to play queen a1. I also made note that there's no queen b6, but somehow I had a complete blind spot in the center of the board, this d4 square. Opponent plays queen d4 check, and I'm just getting mated. I was very disappointed with myself. If I move this way, it's mate. I played this move, and then queen a1, and I lost the game. After fighting so hard to survive first down 2 pawns, or first down 1 pawn, then down 2 pawns, and then down 1 pawn, then a drawn queen ending, but just kind of collapsed at the very end. Should also mention king h3 doesn't work because queen e6, and g4. So it's pretty sad. This was a very long game too. So after this game, I really didn't have much time before the next game started. And I guess I'll say this now. After this game, I was completely oblivious to all the drama that was unfolding with Magnus and his genes and dropping out of the tournament. And if you're watching this video and you don't know what happened, I'm still trying to catch up on what happened too. But I have one more game to show before I maybe say a few words about that. This is my 4th round of the day, the 9th round total. And I'm playing another strong grandmaster. I believe he's a champion of Serbia, Alesandar Indjic. We actually played before many years ago, I think in 2015 or 2016, at the Pan American Intercollegiate Championships. We drew. I had the white pieces in that game. This time I had the black pieces. And Indjic is known for playing a lot of creative, tricky openings. And this game was no different. He started with the Reti opening, but he played a really interesting idea. And this is somewhat of a trendy line, this sort of English setup with white delaying pawn d4. I was playing my usual pawn b6, trying to be solid. And then he takes, and plays pawn to b4. And this was already kind of a surprise. Now, at some point, I think after the game, I was having flashbacks to a game I played online where I think I encountered this. And it may have been against Indjic. But I'm going to have to do some research. If I did encounter this, it was probably on chess.com and Title Tuesday. But it's an interesting move because black cannot take on b4, allows queen a4 check, and knight c6 is not playable because queen takes. I've committed to b6, so the square is not defended. b4 also has the benefit of trying to restrict c5 and also prepare bishop b2. So in response to this move, I was just trying to be solid, play a6, and I complete development, make sure my d5 pawn is defended. And Indjic was playing really quickly. I wasn't sure if he was like still in opening prep, or maybe he was tilted because he wasn't having the best tournament. But he was still playing like very creatively too, not playing d4, putting the bishop in front of the pawn. And he was playing very aggressively, as we're going to see with the next few moves. Queen c2, creating the battery. I play rook e8, and then pawn a3, solidifying b4, pawn c5, and then knight g5. So ultra aggressive move. Engine does not like this move at all. I played pawn h6, and then he plays another move that the engine doesn't like. But I I didn't know the engine evaluation here, and I thought I was under a lot of pressure. Knight h7 poses some serious questions to black because my knight is attacked from behind. And if I take, white can take, and then my d5 pawn is hanging. And the main point of this move is to deflect my knight away from defending my key center pawn. And I took a long time here before playing my next move. And my next move is actually a blunder, bishop c6. It misses a very strong opportunity. And maybe in a classical game, I would eventually arrive at the right conclusion. I did take nearly 5 minutes to play bishop c6. But what I should have done here was abandon my d5 pawn. It's a very difficult decision. I should have also abandoned some central control by playing the move knight to g4, top engine move. And the point of this move is to leave the knight on h7 without a clear future. Like the knight is completely stuck here. And it's okay if black loses a pawn, because white is probably not saving the knight. There's another strong move here, bishop e5, offering some trade. And if bishop takes e5, knight takes e5, black is down a pawn, but the fact that the center is open, the knight's still here, engine gives -2 in black's favor. So I think my quality of play in this game was much lower because of what happened to me in the previous game. I was just not sharp at all. And after bishop c6, it's more tragedy. And I'll go ahead and say that this was probably the most lopsided game, at least going forward from here. I got completely outplayed. Even though engine says, okay, black is still maybe doing fine, it just felt like white had all the initiative. Yeah, he maintained defense over g2. And I tried to complete development, but my time was so bad. I'm under 3 minutes. He still has over 13 minutes. And it's just so hard to play in such a position. And then he still wants to attack me too. Like these bishops combined with a rook lift. It's so powerful. So hard to deal with. I tried to set up tactics along the c-file. In doing so, I drop another pawn. And there was a moment here I played kind of a cool move. Bishop to d4. Saying, oh no, my bishop. Now, what's funny is white can just take it. And white can sacrifice a queen. My point was to take on g2, rook takes g2, and rook takes c2. I would win the queen for 2 bishops. But white is completely crushing after bishop g7. Now, this probably isn't the most practical line to go for as white, like sacking the queen, but it would have been winning. Instead, my opponent played a little bit more safely, played queen b1, getting off the c-file. Engine says this is a blunder, but white still has a nearly decisive advantage. And then I just could not survive here. Momentum is swaying in white's favor. I played knight c5, counterattacking the bishop. Engine says I should have played bishop a4, maybe some chances to still fight on. But then after takes, white's now threatening knight to d5. I have less than 30 seconds. I tried to set up this fork. Opponent saw my threat, wins another pawn. And yeah, my tricks do not work out. Eventually, I'm just down a bishop. I keep playing on, because why not? I threaten mate in 1. My opponent doesn't allow it. And yeah, queen f3 is a completely fine move. I lose. So that was my day. 2 draws, 2 losses. Few moments of tragedy, I guess across 3 of my games. The first round game, I had a winning position. My second round game, I had a draw and then spoiled it, and then this game. But it's the nature of such a strong tournament. If you give your opponents opportunities, they do pounce. And I'm not too disappointed. I'm learning a lot. I'm enjoying myself. It was really cool to see a lot of fans come out. Got approached a lot before walking into the venue. Maybe I'll share some photos or video.
Look who's here! You might get some signature requests. You want a photo? Thank you.
We'll come out here tomorrow.
Thank you.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Wow, people are more excited about Eric than anybody.
Alright, big fan.
Wesley's on! Wesley's on!
Oh my goodness, big fan.
Go, Wesley.
Wesley.
Wesley, please. Nobody
Sorry?
You guys don't recognize Denise or what? He beat Magnus. Okay. I guess that's not how you make yourself a name.
What?
You need a channel on YouTube first.
Love your channel. Can you send me this footage? For real? Could you send me this?
Yeah, video. Yeah, I will.
Yeah, there's one more day of rapid chess, 4 more games. I don't have the best score. I'm 2.5 out of 9. But I've played all high-rated players so far. And actually, pairings are up for round 10. My round 10 opponent will be another Grandmaster, Johan Sebastian Christensen from Norway. So yeah, I'm going to try and prepare for that game. And I guess before I end the video, what do I want to mention? I want to mention that my Twitch channel will be live. WIM Jesse February will be taking over yet again for the last day of the Rapid. She'll also be taking over for Blitz Championship, which is the day. There's a rest day after tomorrow, but then it's Blitz Championship is on the 30th of December. And then, do I really want to address all the Magnus FIDE drama? Yeah, there was a dress code sent out. Basically what happened was Magnus has withdrawn, I believe, from the tournament. He was wearing jeans today. He was, I think, given a warning and told to change, and he didn't want to. And there was some interview, and there's a lot of threads on social media. Yeah, it's kind of an unfortunate situation because he does bring a lot of attention to events like this. I would have loved the opportunity to play him, but maybe now it's my mission to score better than him. I don't know if I win my last 3 games, will I catch him in the standings? But yeah, I didn't actually pack any jeans with me for this trip. I only packed like suit pants, some corduroy pants. I did pack shorts, like athletic shorts, but I don't think I'll be wearing that to the tournament. But yeah, if you want tickets, if you're in New York City and you want tickets to watch in person, I think they're still available. Link below in the description. You probably won't be able to see Magnus in person, but maybe you can still see me. So yeah, I think I'll end it there. Really appreciate everyone watching, offering support and good vibes. Do appreciate all the kind words in the comments and also in the Twitch chat for people that watch the broadcast live on Twitch. And yeah, I'm gonna try and get some rest, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay tuned.